So I learned that authenticity was a gem, a rare gem, especially in our world today. People are scared of being themselves and telling their stories, whereas it is the most refreshing gift you can give to somebody. Because when you strip off the layers that embellish your soul and the layers that you have used to coat your personality so that you're more acceptable to people, when you remove that, what you're left with is the core of who you are. It is that uniqueness I talked about at the start, the very precious human that you are that nobody has ever met. And nobody will ever meet another version of that. And so when you connect with people authentically, they are drawn to you, they're able to trust you, and they are blessed by your presence because you've given them a gift that nobody else can possibly give to them.
You've got an amazing story. I've looked into your background somewhat. So I have a basic understanding, I suppose, very basic understanding of you and your journey, some of the ups, some of the extreme downs that you've had to go through as well. And you've got an amazing TED Talk where you've delved into that story as well. But I'd love to delve into it a little bit more with yourself today. First thing I'd like to understand is in your business journey, and maybe for people that aren't maybe familiar with the journey that you've gone along, has there been any particular point where it's been so tough that you almost gave up? And if so, how did you overcome that particular point in time?
That's a great question. Thank you again. I have had moments where I've wanted to give up. The first time I remember considering giving up was years ago before I opened my boutique. I had an office in Bromley where I live, and I went into the office that day. I think it was a Saturday morning or so, quiet day. And I was looking at the business numbers and I thought, I feel like I'm doing and I've done everything I could possibly do. And this business isn't growing. And I said to myself, I think it's time, Toks, for you to begin to consider the possibility of giving up. I wasn't giving up in that moment, but I was preparing my mind to accept that is a conversation I need to hold with myself. And I remember just got up and I sat in a corner. I must have cried, sort of prayed, like exasperation. I don't know what to do. Then I got up and went on the computer, opened my email, and I saw an email from an organization inviting me to speak at an event that was holding some 3-4 months later, the following year. It was meant to hold in February. And it was a major event that's held annually and attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors from around the world. And they said, we would like you to speak on the subject of how to keep going in a tough economy.
Oh, wow. Timing.
Right. And the way the email was constructed was very clear that they didn't know that I was sitting in a corner crying only minutes before. They were very respectful, writing in such high regard of me and naming all the household names that had graced the same stage before me. And what that email did for me was it gave me a box to stand on, or it became the box that I stood on to be able to see from October, which is where we were, to February of the following year, and to see myself standing on a stage as a business owner, speaking to other business owners about my journey. And there was no way I was going to go on a stage and say, I want to tell you how not to quit, where by the way, I have quit my journey. And so it encouraged me to keep going. So I have a number of tools that I use, which I've just simply developed as I've gone along every time. So that was a great one. That was the tool I picked up in there was the ability to look into your future and see yourself doing what you really want to do, even though right now it feels like there is no hope that you'll get there. And so in that particular instance, I got an email from an external company. But when you don't have an email like that, you can actually write a day in your life and date it the 5th of February 2025 or whatever. Today is the 5th of February 2025. It's a great day. I've just woken up and I've made my coffee. My home smells nice. And I just lit my candle, vanilla essence. And I'm now sitting on the sofa and I'm writing in my journal. It's a beautiful day. My children are asleep and they'll be up in an hour. I have a whole day today. I'm attending a book signing and I'm attending an interview on GMTV or whatever. And I'm doing, and you describe a day in your life exactly how you would love it to look like, what you want it to look like. And it's a very simple exercise that is extremely uplifting. So that I have had moments since that day when I've considered quitting. I've had moments when I didn't want to quit, but I was certain I was going to be forced to quit. And somehow I use all of these little things, to keep going.
Wow. The timing is crazy. Oh my gosh. Something I find, so I know you was born here and then you spent a lot of your childhood in Nigeria and
That's
you
right.
came back.
That's right. Yeah.
Something I find is that a lot of Nigerian people I come across are very enterprising, very enterprising. I look at my father-in-law, he's very enterprising. Look at yourself and your journey and very enterprising. There's been probably a number of times where it would have been a lot easier to just leave it all behind and then go back into the corporate world. Maybe not easier in terms of like managing time with family stuff, but easier in the sense that you don't have the stresses that come along with entrepreneurship. But through everything, you've managed to rise above the different challenges that you've had, and you're still here today with your business. What would you attribute that mindset to in your own personal experience?
I think that, proud to be Nigerian.
Yeah.
There's a very special, Nigerians have an additional gene in their DNA that just makes them the most amazing people.
I've never heard it explained like that before.
Because there are so many ways you can explain Nigeria. It's like, we're amazing people. But the mindset, I think that being raised in a culture and in a community where the only option is success has certainly helped. I was privileged to have been raised in Nigeria. Growing up in Nigeria is a privilege. Growing up in Africa is a privilege. And as a Black woman, I'm surrounded by Black doctors, Black lawyers. The president is Black. All the governors are Black. Every single person is like me. Now, I didn't realize that was a privilege when I was growing up, because there was nothing to compare it with. For me, that was normal. And as a matter of fact, I did not grow up as a Black girl. I grew up as a girl. We didn't define ourselves by color. We don't do that in Africa because we just are people. We don't have to be defined by this color of our skin. And then I come to the United Kingdom, and I didn't actually recognize racism for many years because I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know that. I knew that such a thing existed, but because I'd never experienced it or had it explained to me, I didn't know what it looked like. And so I would just attribute that sort of behavior to bad behavior, like it wasn't necessarily race. But to get back to your point, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I grew up in a healthy environment where success was the norm. Everybody in Nigeria is a dreamer. I was there back in October or November last year, and whenever I go there, my parents live there, my brothers live there. I talk to as many people as I can. I speak to the person who sells pepper on the street, the Uber driver, the receptionist, like every single person, and find out, what do you want out of life? What are you working towards? And everybody has a dream. The girl who hawks pepper and tomatoes and plantains on the street. I love the plantain sales because I love my dodo. She has a dream. They would tell you what they're working towards. It may not be massive, but they're going somewhere. They're not satisfied with the life they have. And I think that is a privilege that that's something I was privileged to have been raised with. It's like, it just never ends. I was in an Uber the other day in London, and I was looking at the Uber driver's name, and I could tell that he was African, but I couldn't tell that he was Nigerian because I've never seen that surname before. So I asked where he was from, and he'd heard me speak on the phone, picked up on my accent and said, same place you're from. I'm like, you're Nigerian? And he goes, yeah. And I asked what part he was, and he was Igbo. And I thought, okay. So I said, so what else do you do besides being an Uber driver? And he laughed and said, what makes you think I do something different? And I said, because you're Nigerian. And then he goes on to name that he's a property developer, and he owns a business that rents out chauffeured cars to people, and he has an NGO in Nigeria, and he does this and he does that. And that really is the Nigerian spirit, that you're never satisfied with where you are. When you arrive at your goal, it's a sign that you need to dream a new dream and keep going.
Wow, I love that. I love that you ask him, what else do you do? How do you know? Oh, because you're Nigerian.
Yeah.
And then he just lists it out.
And then he goes and he lists everything he's doing. It's just, and it's inspiring. So I've lived here for, how long have I lived here for? Over 30 years now. And it's very easy to take on the culture of England, which is for the masses. It's aimed to have a house, but pay off your mortgage, and that's pretty much the end of your dream. And it's easy for that to be absorbed by osmosis. But I have a very strong community of my fellow African brothers and sisters, and we think differently, and being amongst them really does help to keep my eye on the goal. Like, no, don't settle, because I want to. The late Miles Monroe had a saying that I love. It goes, he wanted to die empty, and I want to die empty. I don't want to come to the end of my life and think I could have done this, I could have done that. I want every single gift in me to be used, and I want to become everything God created me to become. And so that's it.
So what's your dream or vision?
Ooh, which of them? My dream, right now, I recognize that my gifts or some of my most prominent gifts are in the area of communication, speaking and writing, but not just communication, but changing the way people think, affecting mindsets, changing thought processes, so that people are not just existing on earth, but that they are striving to become who they are. And why that's important is because there are no two versions of Tevin. There are no two versions of Toks. Even if you were an identical twin, you don't have exactly the same fingerprints. No two people share the same dentition. No two people have the same DNA. Like, we are so unique. And unfortunately, many of us are so focused on living and operating through life in a way that ends up turning us into clones of each other. I sit down and I'm looking and I think, oh, she has a business that is making money. I'm going to go do that too. But who I am is not out there in the world. Who I am is who I am on the inside. And there is a uniqueness on my inside, on our inside, on every single person that needs to come out. And that uniqueness is what makes the world beautiful. Mm-hmm. I like to think of the world as the inside of the world as having molds all around the walls of the walls. There are molds, and everybody slots into their own unique mold. But we only slot into our mold when we are authentic and we allow our true selves to come out, when we allow ourselves to live as God created us to live. And so that's my dream. My dream is to help change the mindsets of people, help to change the way that we see ourselves in this world, and be bold enough to be who we were created to be, because there are no two versions.
Now, quickly, before we get into this episode, a quick word from our sponsor, us. Or in other words, 1000 Visuals, the production company behind 1000 Voices. With 1000 Voices, I was looking for a studio that had that high quality cinematic and homely feel to it, but I just couldn't find anywhere. So we decided to open up our own space. We've got 4 high quality cinema cameras. We've got shotgun mics, not those podcasting mics that cover half your face as well, so people can see you when you're speaking to them. And we've got some basic amenities as well. Water, herbal teas, espressos, you name it. We'd love to invite you to come down to our space to create some content with us. If you are interested, check the link in the description, and I'd love to take you on a tour of this space and invite you to come record some stuff with us. Thank you. Now let's get back to the episode. You have an incredible story, and it'll be great to set some context for people who may not be as familiar with your story and your journey. Mm-hmm. I'd like to start things off with when you were pregnant. Was it your first child, I believe? It was your first child, I think, right? Or was it second child?
My third.
Third, oh my gosh. Third at the time, yes.
Third at the time,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because you had a fourth.
I had a fourth later, yeah.
All boys?
4 boys,
Oh my gosh. Same in my family, all boys.
Oh, really?
Even all my cousins are boys as well.
Oh my goodness. So you know what my house looks like then.
all boys growing up. I've got girls, but none of them are in the UK. They're in Ghana or in the US. But over in the UK,
it's all boys.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But I'd like to set some context. So you were pregnant with your third boy, and then you and your husband decided, okay, we're going to move over to the US.
Yeah, actually, so I had I'd had my first 3 kids, and then I'd had my third, and I worked as a medical rep for a pharmaceutical company at the time. And it was now time. Maternity leave is over. It's time for me to go back to work. And I wanted to reduce my working hours. I wanted to go from full to part-time. And they were like, no, sorry, you got to work full-time. Like, I've got 3 children, ages 3 and under. We were a little bit crazy. 3 children, ages 3 and under. I couldn't do full-time. And I happened to be reading a book at the time where the author said, your gift is that thing you do so effortlessly that everyone thinks it's a big deal except you. And you talked about timing a few minutes ago. And the timing was, I was reading that sentence in the book when the email came turning down my request at exactly the same time. And my reaction to the email was, I just was so exasperated. I was like, my husband said, maybe this is a chance for you to do what you really want to do. And I just kind of shouted back at him, I don't know what I like to do. How old was I then? I was 27 or so at the time, 28 maybe. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And I just realized I had just read that your gift is that thing you do so effortlessly. So I thought maybe my gift is interior design, because we both got married. We got married when I was in my second year in university. He was in his third. And I became obsessed with doing up our apartment. And that's when I started to swap my physiology lessons for days out to B&Q in their bargain bucket, picking up old wallpaper and discounted mismatched wallpaper, buying white paint and mixing it with dye because we were so broke, but I wanted different colors in our flat, and just all of the interior stuff. I didn't realize that I had a knack for it, but somehow that came out in that season. And everyone loved my home. My friends would say, hey, I love the way you've used this throw and that cushion and da-da-da-da. So I thought maybe that's my gift. Everyone thinks it's a big deal. I don't think it is, so that must be my gift. So I went on and enrolled on an interior design course and set up an interior design firm. And it was while I was still in the middle of running that company. I mean, when I say I was running a company, I was really just trying to find my way around having a business, because prior to that, my only experience in business had been a checkout girl in Asda. So I had no experience of business whatsoever. For example, I printed out these really nice fridge magnets, which I designed on Vistaprint, and I printed them out. I was so proud of it. I don't even remember what it said, but I know it was purple and yellow, and went around my neighborhood and distributed them. I put them through people's doors as a way of advertising my interior design services. The company was called Space Interior Design. I was so proud of it. I was proud of myself. And then I rushed home because I thought the phone's going to be ringing off the hook. People are going to call me for their design projects. And I was like, no one's called. This is really strange. It was 2 days later, I realized I didn't even have a phone number or an email number, no email address. There was nothing on the adverts. It was just Space Interior Design and some cute quotes and nice colors and nothing. So that was what I was doing when I'd started to get a couple of projects here and there, but from friends. When my husband comes back from work one day and says, why don't we move to the US? Because we loved America. We would go there every year. And each time we went, we would go to multiple states and then we'd come back home miserable, like every time. I remember us coming from Gatwick Airport to Victoria, and we're waiting for the train on Victoria and saying, look at how there's gum on the especially when we came back from Florida. Florida. We were in Orlando, and Orlando
nice
is
and warm.
perfect. It's nice and warm, and it is a picture. It's a fairy tale because everything is so clean and so perfect because of Disney, and everything is shaped like Mickey Mouse ears and everything. And then you walk onto platform 5 in Victoria Station, and it's rainy and grit, and it's just all over the place, and and we're moaning and complaining. And so he said, it made perfect sense. Like, yeah, you know what, why don't we? So we sold our home, and we took our boys, our 3 boys at the time, and we moved to Georgia, and we moved to Atlanta, did a bit of research, and we both, because we're both Christians, we had decided we're moving to the States, but where are we going to move to? We love all the different states we've been to, but we'd never been to Atlanta. We'd never been to the state of Georgia. And he said, why don't you pray about it? And I'm like, yeah, now you pray about it, and let's decide on what we're going to go. And the following day I said, I know where I want to go. And he just went to Georgia. And I was like, yes, because there were many. Georgia was known, Atlanta was known for upwardly mobile Black people, beautiful place, and everything. So we thought, we're going to go there. We're going to see what it looks like. So we went there for 2 weeks, I think it was, and we fell in love, and we asked all the different questions, and everywhere we went, we would ask them, where are we? Where's the best place to live? And what is it like? And what are the people like? They were warm. They were friendly. It was beautiful. So we moved there. And in the process of our move, purchased a baby furniture store, which was my introduction into the whole world of luxury furniture for babies and children. I'd never considered specializing in baby anything. I already had too many of my own. So that was not my interest, but it was what was the store was available. We had been looking for a business to purchase, and we'd looked at everything from dry cleaners to sandwich stores we had a great lawyer who was in Atlanta who would always advise us and tell us the benefits and the disadvantages of a particular business, and not just the financial side, but the lifestyle. For example, with dry cleaning, he said, if you're going to make money dry cleaning, you would need to dry clean 1,000 shirts for $1 each, something like that, or 1,000,000 shirts for $1 each. And, you've got children, working hours, and he was really helpful in that regard. So we settled on this babies and children's furniture store, which was completely new for me, because now I had to learn about wood. I had to learn about craftsmanship, methods of joining methods. I had to learn about paint finishes and so many different things. And then let's add to the fact that the American English is totally different from the Brits, and they're using terminology that I'd never heard of before. But it was fun. It was an adventure. I totally loved it, got sucked straight into it. And the business started growing, and it was doing amazingly well. I was worried about the fact that people might find out that the business, because it was a great business, and so I didn't change anything about it. And I'd have people come into the store, and they'll say, "Oh, is Holly in?" Holly was one of the previous owners. Of 2 previous owners were called Holly and Holly, and I'll be like, "Oh no, she's not in today." And I never admitted to them that actually they don't own the business anymore, because I was so scared that if I shifted anything, it would all come tumbling down, because I'd never done anything like that before. But it went very well, and gradually I relaxed and, began to let people know that I actually owned the business, and it was doing very well. And then we began to hear rumors of a recession coming. This was in 2007/2008. So we began to hear rumors of a coming recession. And one of my acquaintances, her husband worked on Wall Street, and she said to me, Toks, there's going to be a really rough year for retailers next year, and you need to think really hard about renewing your lease. So I thought, okay, but I'm like, well, we'll ride it. We can handle this, or whatever's coming. But then we were in a strip mall, and a strip mall is like a U-shaped mall in the US, and with anchor stores in the corners. And one of the main anchor stores, which was a furniture store that had been in business for like 30 years or something like that, which for Americans, a 30-year business is like a 300-year business in the UK. And they shut down. And rumors began to circulate around. A lot of the businesses were talking that they were closing our mall, and all kinds of stuff was going on. But we began to watch after that furniture store closed, the one next to it went, and the one next to it. And in succession, it was literally a domino effect. And we just stood watching, not knowing what to do, because it was very clear that it was coming to hit us. So eventually I had to face up to the fact that this is not working. I had to go the way, because we think with a mall, a store in a mall is you're dependent on the other businesses for traffic, a bit like the high street. And so you're feeding off the traffic from all the stores around you. And we were surrounded by great brands and they were all closing down. So I had to make the decision. I had already hired a web designer to help to design or to create an e-commerce website, because we did have a website, but it wasn't e-commerce. Help create a website that was e-commerce. The first lady did one and it wasn't anything like, I didn't really like it. So I cut my losses, went on to the next guy who did an amazing job with regards to the appearance, and he even did a rebrand, never considered it. He got some lady in Japan to rebrand the logo and everything just looked so beautiful, but the website did not work. And so it was in the middle of this, and I had spent, I think, at that point, so far, I had spent about 14 grand on the website, and with more that was coming. And it was just not, he just couldn't get it to work. And we fell out acrimoniously because he said, just pay me the balance and then I'll fix it. I'm like, no, you fix it first and then you get paid. And so we fell out. So now I'm facing the closing of my business. And now I don't have an e-commerce website even to bounce back off. And so I spoke to the landlords, gave them the notice, told our customers we were moving online, even though I had no website to go to. Then I began researching on Google. By this time, I was also pregnant with my fourth son. And then we came back to England. Began researching on Google how to build a website, because I thought about the guy who the first website we had told me he couldn't do e-commerce. The second woman who built the website I didn't like, it was ugly. The third person who built this amazing website, but it didn't work. And my friend, a good friend of mine, Esau, had introduced me to a friend of his who was a website builder, and he could do it, but I just didn't have the money by that time. I thought of everybody. They all built websites and they were not born with the ability to be. They had to learn. I'm sure I can learn. And so that was the Nigerian in me again. So I go onto Google and type in how to build a website. And at the time, website building really was rocket science, because there were components. There was no such thing as Shopify or BigCommerce then. You had to pay for the CMS, which is a content management system. You had to pay for the template, buy the template, and different vendors sold these things. There wasn't one place you got them. Then you had to get a connector that connected your website to a payment processor. Then you needed another connector that connected the payment processor to your bank. And all of these steps, you had to find a way to bring it all together. And I did. And so in total, my website cost me £75 to build. So I always say I started my business with actually $75, not £75. And so finally learned, and I got the website working and so on. And it carried on. We decided to, I was able to learn how to do the SEO on the website, like I mentioned on the TED Talk. And it really started to bring in a lot of, people were buying and all of that. But I still had that whole, I've lost a business issue going on in my mind. I felt embarrassed about it. I felt ashamed about it. And I didn't really want to tell people how my business journey started, which hindered me, because when I went for networking events, I would hide, try and tell people, like, oh, so how did you get into that? I'm like, you tell me about yourself. Until I read an article in Success Magazine where the same story two versions of a story were told of the same woman. And the first one was called the rockstar version. The second one was a sub version, because the rockstar version talked about her accolades and everything great she had done. And the sub version only focused on the negatives. And when I finished reading the article, I realized that I had only been telling myself and telling others one version of my story, and that was the sub version. the sad version, the fact that I lost a business, the fact that we had to come back and we came back to England and I was pregnant and I had to move in with a friend and we had nothing and we, and now everybody else is hiring a web designer to build their website and I had to build that myself. I didn't see that as a plus. I thought it was a negative. I didn't see that I had a journey of resilience and tenacity. I just thought I had a journey of loss. So when I was done rewriting my story after being inspired by that article, I read it. I thought, this is good. This is really good. And I felt encouraged about my own story. So I, from then on, began to read that piece of paper. I finished that paper. By the time I was done, it was tattered because I will have moments when I'd cry, and just be so sad and fed up of everything. And I'll grab the paper and I'll read it and I'll feel encouraged again. And without meaning to, I memorized it. And so I ran into a journalist one day and she said, she says, hey, I just want to know how you got into your business. We had a meeting. She was going to feature some of my products. But then she goes, as she was leaving, she goes, how did you get into this? And I just tell her my rockstar story, which I didn't realize that I had memorized until that moment. Because normally people would say, how did you get into it? I'll be like, oh, we moved to the States and I learned about it in the States and I'll stop there. And then I came back to England and I started it. But I told her the story and she was so inspired by it. And she sat back down and called the editor of the newspaper, it was a national newspaper. And she goes, we've got a good story and we must run it. And they went on to publish it. And I remember feeling a bit apprehensive before it was published because even though I was now encouraged by the story, it was the first time that it was going to be publicly out there for people to see that we lost everything. And I had become comfortable with it within myself, but I had not yet tested what it would feel like when other people saw that story. So now I'm the magazine comes out and I was bold enough to share it on Facebook and say, and the feedback was really positive. But more importantly, I got nominated for an award, Retailer of the Year, by an organization called Precious. Precious Awards, they do, it's actually for women of color, people of color, not just women, but men and women of color, businesses and so on. So I got nominated, and at the award ceremony, people wanted to know how I got into the business, and my courage had now finally come. I was like, oh, and I tell them the rockstar story that I was so ashamed of. I was now practically bragging about that story around the room. And I got invitations to join a charity. I got invitations to speak in some private events. And later on, the more I told the story, the more I noticed that it was opening doors for me. I got an invitation to 10 Downing Street to have cocktails. I got... when I wanted to open a concession in House of Fraser, I told them the story. I remember that day I came out of Baker Street, was going for an appointment with a buyer at the head office, and I'm walking down the platform like, God, I don't know what to say. What am I going to say? What am I going to tell them? How am I going to convince them? And I think that they're more interested in all the sophisticated numbers and cash flow and how much money my company is going to make for them. I get there and there's like a panel where about 3 or 4 people there with a head buyer and other members of his team. And I start doing all the sophisticated talk about cash flow and everything, half the stuff I don't know what I'm talking about. And I noticed that I am losing them. I noticed that they were like, well, not really interested. And they start to protest and tell me that House of Fraser is not known for furniture. They're known for fashion and beauty. So they don't think it's going to work. And then I just say, let me just tell you how I got started. And I tell them my rockstar story. And before I get to the end, the buyer goes, I've got an appointment. We're going to have you on. We would love to have you on. And it was based on that. And I've done so many, any opportunity I have, any desire I have for something, I tell that story, and it opens doors for me. So I learned that authenticity was a gem, a rare gem, especially in our world today. People are scared of being themselves and telling their stories, whereas it is the most refreshing gift you can give to somebody, because when you strip off the layers that embellish your soul and the layers that you have used to coat your personality so that you're more acceptable to people, when you remove that, what you're left with is the core of who you are. It is that uniqueness I talked about at the start, the very precious human that you are that nobody has ever met. And nobody will ever meet another version of that. And so when you connect with people authentically, they are drawn to you, they're able to trust you, and they are blessed by your presence because you've given them a gift that nobody else can possibly give to them. And that's what I learned. And I have continued to champion being authentic. I don't call myself an authentic person because I think it's more of a lifestyle than a person that you are. So I try as much as I can. There are times I fall. There are times I get sucked into the whole social media culture of wanting to appear a certain way, and it never works for me. But what always works for me is being myself.
It's an amazing story. It's a powerful story.
Thank you.
Have you heard the Steve Jobs quote? The most powerful person in the room is the storyteller.
Oh, really?
Something like that.
Interesting.
It's not too far from that, but essentially that's what he says. The most powerful person in the room is the storyteller.
Wow.
That's what came to my head. He's one of the most successful business people in recent years that everybody knows what he's been able to do. I think what I love about what makes him so successful, I think, above a lot of entrepreneurs, is that he'd done it. Like he started with Apple, built it to a certain level, then got kicked out, and then done the same thing again with Pixar, and then went back to Apple, then done it again. It's like, so it wasn't a stroke of luck. He was able to repeat and do it over and over again. So someone like him with that level of experience and everything that he's done and accomplished, turned around and said, the most powerful person in the room is a storyteller. And that's a skill he's used. That's interesting. Loads of times. That's a skill that Apple still use to today.
Wow.
I was watching was it start of this year? No, last year. You know when they do their product launches?
Right, yeah.
And I was watching the last one they'd done in September, October, whenever it was, and they were launching like the new Apple Watch and new phone, all that kind of thing. And they opened up with a story. They opened up with a story about how, so their watches, they have, if there's certain models, you have the heart rate readers and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So then he was talking about how they had different families and how it saved like this person's life because it read like an irregular heartbeat. And then it was also stuff, but the way it was woven into a powerful story, I was like watching a movie. I'm like,
really?
I'm like sucked in, like, oh my gosh.
That is interesting.
I was like, this is good. This is good.
Okay.
A lot of companies will lead with, we've got this feature, our battery life is 40 hours and this and that. And it's like, okay, all right, great, cool. But when you open with the story, it's powerful.
That is interesting.
It's powerful. And I love how you've been able to weave your own story into your own journey. You're in a room with the buyers and you're losing them. You're like, okay, let me tell you my story. All of a sudden, okay, great. Now we want you. It's a very powerful skill to have, I think.
That is so good to hear.
In your business journey, particularly maybe from the US actually, after you've gone through the up and then the down, through that financial recession period, what lessons did you learn from that period?
I think the most powerful lesson I learned was that there are gifts inside of us that are even more valuable than cash. Because in that season, all I could see was the absence of money. And all I could see was my need and my requirement is money. Like if I have money, I'll be fine, because we'd lost everything. So that became the looming figure in front of me. But I truly believed that everything that I wanted to be, I could be, and I believed I had it inside of me. I was also very privileged to have been raised by the most amazing parents. Till this day, my parents tell us how gifted we are. They say, oh, you can be. My mom was speaking to me just 2 days ago. She goes, Toks, I look forward to your videos on social media because they're so good. I mean, I don't know anybody who speaks like you. The very first time when I released my podcast, she said to me, I don't know if anybody can even say that Oprah's as good as you. Like she's like, and they're very serious about it as well. So they have been great in making sure. So I've grown up and I'm an adult, but I still hear my parents' voice in my head. But I learned that I had stuff inside of me, perhaps because they told me that from my childhood, and money isn't the answer to everything. That the things that are unseen are more valuable than the things that are seen. And so I had to start digging deep inside of me. And the minute I started to practice introspection, because I was looking for stuff inside me, I also discovered that there was stuff that shouldn't be there. I discovered I had limiting mindsets and beliefs. I discovered I had habits. I had cultural beliefs that were not serving me. And I had to start stripping those away. And I had to start reaching down within me to pull out the gifts that God had placed inside of me. So that was really the most powerful lesson I think I learned in that season. I also learned about the power of community. You know, my friend Susie, she opened her home to us. She actually said, from the airport, come straight to my house. We got to Susie's house and she had a breakfast spread waiting for us. And not only that, she had converted her dining room into a large bedroom for us.
Wow.
And we were there for months until we were able to move into a place of our own. So the people that you have in your life is essential. But you see, you've got to practice being quiet by yourself every single day because number one, it helps you to learn about yourself. You learn who you are. When you get to know who you are, you will trust who you are. When you trust who you are, you will believe the leading of your spirit. You will believe when it tells you this person isn't good for you, that person is good for you. And you will trust that instruction because your spirit actually knows where you should be going. It's the mind and the body that don't. The mind is reliant on information that is fed into it. And that information can come from your spirit or it can come from your flesh, which is the one with the world. But how do you know what to believe? Well, you know what to believe when you spend enough time with yourself to recognize your voice, because the voice in the world is very loud. I feel like I'm going off in a tangent.
No, it makes perfect
Does it make sense? Okay,
like
great.
it really, really resonates.
Okay.
We talk about the spirit, knowing who we are at our core and what we need to be doing.
Yes.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Good, yeah.
In this world, it's so tough to find any time, a lot of time to do something like that, to be quiet and just be introspective because everything is so fast. You know, you go to your work and then you work and you come home, you're maybe with your family or you just want to watch TV or whatever, and then you go to bed and then you repeat. Most people, in terms of like without technology, just finding time to just be by yourself and really have that time to be introspective. Most people either maybe one, don't understand the importance of it, or two, just maybe don't have the time to even do it, or maybe don't even know how to do it. There's a number of things, but I think if we all found some time to do some more, that would be an incredibly powerful and transformative thing for us as individuals, and then us as a society, as a people, that would aggregate upwards, wouldn't it? How do couple things for you actually on that point? First of all, how do you do it? What's your practice for, you know, that introspective sort of looking at yourself and seeing any limiting beliefs and that kind of thing? And what's your practice for that? And secondly, on the limiting beliefs, what sort of limiting beliefs did you or have you found that you've had that have held you back?
Okay, good question. So my number one practice is journaling. So being a Christian, I spend time praying, I read the Bible, but I first, in practice, I get up early in the morning. And by early, I mean anywhere between 4 and 6. So on a good day, I'm up at 4:30 at the latest. And I spend time praying and reading my Bible, and then I start to journal. You see, what journaling does is it exposes the thoughts of your heart, because there are thoughts that we have in our heart that we are unaware of, or we're unaware of the effect it can have on us. So I don't trust anything that's in my mind unless I can see it. And what journaling does is it brings out the contents of the mind onto paper so that you can analyze it and you can cross out the wrong thoughts and you can correct the wrong thinking, or you can address any concerns. So I do that. And by doing that, I get to know more about myself. Something else I do as well, a practice, is I ask myself the question a lot: why did you do that? Or why did you say that? It doesn't have to be in response to something bad. It's just like, why did you say that? What was the driving force? What was the driving thoughts that made you ask this guy this question? What was the driving thought that made you say that? And often I'll discover sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's pride. You know, like, why did you feel like you had to? So a good example was I picked a friend up from the airport some time back, and I was taking him to his hotel. And as I was driving, we went through Mayfair and we went through a new 5-star state-of-the-art hotel that had recently opened. And they had requested some our services the previous week. So they're a client of ours. And I was driving by and I was so tempted to say, hey, that's my client. But thankfully, I said, why? What is the benefit? Why do you want to say that to him? And I wanted to say, because I wanted to show off. It's a simple answer. So I've become comfortable with seeing the ugly side of me so I don't run away from it. Instead, I'm able to address it. And that's one of the ways in which, it's just really, I think also there is this whole, and it might come from our culture where we are judged for bad behavior. So that even when you don't behave in a negative way, you judge yourself for even thinking it. One of the things I do on social media is I read from my journal, which a lot of people think is absolutely crazy. I read through and I make a decision. I'm going to read this entry out on social media and share what was going through my mind and why I wrote it. Because it helps it's just me showing how I navigate life, because I really want to encourage more people to journal and get into their minds. And the most recent one I read was where I recognized I had written that I can't even remember exactly what the scenario was, but I think that was it. I had written that I was not doing as much as I should. I wasn't pushing myself as hard as I should. And I felt bad about it. And then I felt guilty that I felt bad about it. So now I'm dealing with two different emotions that I don't even need to be dealing with. And so the way I navigated that was, number one, I'm human. I shouldn't feel guilty for not wanting to get up early in the morning. Getting up early in the morning is not does not deserve an applause. And oversleeping doesn't mean I should put myself down. And so it was just me navigating that and just talking through. I just feel like the world feeds us, or we allow our minds to be fed with so much negative information, like you said. And the contents of your mind become your thoughts. And as a man thinks, so is he. So we lose who we are as people. And we take on the identity of the world, And when I say the world, I just mean faceless personalities.
And lose your uniqueness that you spoke about at the start.
Exactly.
Yeah, amazing. Let's talk about your business now.
Okay.
What have you, if anything, what have you done differently this time round after your experience in the US and moving back to the UK and running your business now?
It's funny because I was reading an old entry in my journal this morning, and I noticed I wrote that when I was in the US, everything was a stab in the dark. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying things out and it was working. I didn't even include God in the thing. I just Whereas this time around, I'm a lot more intuitive. It's almost like two different people, which makes the question difficult to answer, because who I was then is not who I am now. So it's not to say that I am doing things differently, which I am, but it's more like it's a different person running the business. So there's hardly any comparison between the two. I discovered recently, or should I say I admitted to myself recently, that in my current business, the Baby Cot Shop, I am running it as I have been operating as two different personalities, because I have the Baby Cot Shop, for example, on social media. I've got the Baby Cot Shop Instagram and I've got my personal Instagram. If you went on my Instagram, you would not know I had anything to do with the Baby Cot Shop. And it's not because I'm deliberately trying to separate the two. It's because I realized recently that the pain of losing my first business in the US was so great that I subconsciously separated myself from my current business so that should it happen again, I wouldn't be affected by the pain of it. And I feel like my clients have missed out on on me. So while we have a great service, our products are amazing, everything about our business, people love the store, they love walking in, the atmosphere is great, the customer service is great. They have enjoyed that. But there is something else that they could have enjoyed over the years, and that's me, my personality, my uniqueness. I've had customers who have tried to form a relationship with me, a friendship, and I've been like, oh, I'm keeping you at arm's length. So to answer your question, I'm doing things differently now. Now I've permitted myself to open up and be myself with my customers. And I've permitted myself to show up a bit more, and so that's what's happening at the moment. So there's always changes. Specifically from a business point of view, it's hard to say still because it's two different cultures. Running a business in the US is so different from running one here. It's like the culture or the society is different. The expectations are different. When I was in America, the concept of luxury was expected, especially based on where we were. In the UK, because of our location, it's also expected. But I also get like some pushback as well. The odd person would send a message and say, what makes you think you can have prices like that?
Then don't pay.
I remember one time I was doing an Instagram live at the Baby Cot Shop with a person and with another company. And we had opened up for questions, and I'm going through the feed, the questions that were being sent in. And someone said, why are your prices so high? And I was like, the items cost what they cost. It's not mass produced. And I had read the question out loud, and I was struggling to answer the question without being rude, because I'm like, it's not expensive. It just costs what it costs. That's how much it costs for individually crafted, high value premium products, made with high quality wood. But yeah, so it's just different. It's just navigating it differently.
Yeah, no, I love that. You seem like you're very a very reflective person. Someone that takes a lot of time to reflect on yourself, reflect on your journey, very intentionally as well, and then try to use those learnings moving forward and to just be a better person, probably a better businesswoman, better wife, a better mother, all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's a very, very good trait to have. And that's something I'm really taking away from this. I'm even thinking to myself as you're speaking, I need to buy a journal. I need to buy one.
Yes, please
and
do.
My wife has been telling me, because she journals a lot.
Oh, good.
She journals a lot. She has a load of books at home with a lot of writing.
Amazing.
And she's told me a number of times I should do it. And I've started, I've been on and off with it.
Okay.
But it's sort of putting it back home, like maybe I should take it a bit more seriously, actually, the journaling practice. How do you deal with us? So you speak about some of the messages that you've received, some of the negative comments and that kind of thing, and we've had some as well. We've on 1,000 Voices, primarily with us, to be honest, it's more racist comments. We get every once in a while, sometimes on videos and on Instagram and stuff. And I'm up for everybody having their own opinion.
Right.
I have no problem with someone. If you don't agree with me or what we're doing, it's your opinion. You can say what you want. And I can think what I want about it. But it's more so when we get the straight racist comments now, them I just delete, because I'm like, I don't, we don't need any of that. That's just, there's no need for it. If you don't agree with me, cool, we can whatever. If you want to be like that, we don't have no space for hate. But yourself, in your journey, I don't know how often you've received negative comments from people on social media, maybe from people around you in your circle, maybe interactive, I'm not too sure. But when you have, how do you deal with that kind of energy and everything around
it? The way that I mean, I like the fact that you used energy because some of it is unspoken, but it's there. I remember an article I read. It was actually a book. It was Steve Harvey, and someone had written about him like really horrible things. And it was actually two stories. I'll tell you the first, so I'll finish this one. So someone had written some things about him and it was horrible and so on about his life, his private life. And he spoke to, I think it was TEDx or somebody, but he spoke to a friend of his, another prominent man. And the guy said, it's a normal thing. It's a common thing for the dog to bark at the moon. But when the moon barks back, it makes the news. So it's expected that people like that will have something negative to say. But when you respond to them, it blows it up and it validates what they're saying. In other words, ignore it. The second story, which is really more the one that sits at the top of my mind, was when Bishop T.D. Jakes was approached by a well-known magazine or newspaper to be a columnist. He met the editor somewhere and they had a nice conversation, and he says, "You're going to be great for our platform. We want you to write a monthly column." And he was like, fine. So he writes the first one and he rushes when it gets published. He checks online and it's packed with negative comments. Lots of negative comments. So he says, oh, maybe I missed something. Maybe I didn't quite get the pulse of the people. I'm going to go back and rewrite. So following month, he rewrites it and he changes a few things based on the comments that were written. Negative comments again. I think he tried it a third time, negative comments. So he stopped and he ran into the editor again months later. And she goes, what happened? Why did you stop? And he goes, well, felt like I didn't quite get your audience, they didn't, I didn't meet their expectations. She goes, are you kidding me? Your articles were some of the most read and most loved pieces. And he goes, no, but the comments. She goes, oh, no, the commenters are not our customers. They're not our readers. They just comment. They're not our people. Our people don't actually comment on social media. They would write in to us, or they will call, or they will tell us when we meet at events. And so I learned such a powerful lesson that some of the loudest voices don't belong to our circle. And we have to recognize that we are in circles and we're in communities, and our people will recognize us and be drawn to us when we're being authentic, when we're being ourselves. Anybody who comes because they see your light and all they have to say is negativity, they're not your people. They actually are time wasters. And it's best to ignore them. So that's what I do. So when I identify that energy in people, I just draw a boundary line, like, you're not in this circle. You're an outsider. You don't belong here. And I leave them outside.
Apologies.
It's okay.
This conversation has gone very differently to how I envisioned it going.
I hope different good.
No, very, very good. Very, very good. Very differently to how I envisioned it going. I envisioned it being just different, maybe more talking about business strategy and that kind of thing. But I feel like it's gone in a much more powerful direction, way more powerful direction. And I feel very inspired.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of you. And I feel like I've taken away a lot of things, like practices that I personally should be doing, and hopefully people listening maybe will be thinking the same thing. But it's gone in a very powerful direction. First of all, I want to thank you for everything that you shared. You shared a lot, so many gems, and it's been so amazing, so good.
Thank you.
Have you got any final words for us?
Ooh, you want to hear my voice some more? Final words. Understand that you are uniquely created. You are unrepeatable. Even God will not repeat you. Like, he wouldn't make another version of you. And your true value is in your uniqueness. That is your superpower. There is absolutely nothing about your personality. There is nothing about your journey to be ashamed of or to hide. it actually should be out there. It's a light. And if you're holding back from being yourself, or if you're covering up your soul, or if you're embellishing your personality, you're depriving the world of your light, literally. And there are people who will continue to suffer because they didn't get to meet the real you.
Perfect. Thank you so much once
Thank
again
you
for
for
coming
having
on.
me. I've had a great chat. I've had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been so good. I've really, really enjoyed you coming down. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down once again. This is 1000 Voices. We had the amazing Toks, the founder of the Baby Cot Shop, on a podcast. And for now, people, we're out.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, this has been great.
Oh, definitely. It's been good.